So, how'd y'all do in this last stepping stone? Seriously, how'd you do? Seriously. Well, we got another one, obviously, and just like clockwork, I was receiving stuff before I even got out of bed. And this one I get to blame on Will Johanning, and I had his email waiting for me before my feet even hit the floor. And he wrote, and I'll put it up there for you. I had another dream, very short this time, but I was looking at two rivers meeting to join the ocean. They met in a very definite spot before flowing out to the ocean. I drew a sketch of it, and I will send it for a visual reference. We have talked about one river, but this was two meeting, which could be a symbol of the body of Christ, the church, meeting together with the Lord in the air before joining together in heaven. And this was the picture he drew. And lo and behold, I had been looking at a couple of other constellations in the area, and one has to do with the ocean. In fact, the constellation Eridanus, even though it's called a river, some fables hold it up as the ocean, or a river flowing from the ocean coming from Aquarius. So I already got this ocean thingy going and the river thingy going, and here I was looking at other constellations a little bit farther down the timeline. Come to find out, one of them is big when it comes to ocean stuff. And I'm going to throw a new word out for you, one that I've made up, because it just encapsulates all this stuff that has to do with themes and types and shadows. And I'm going to call it themology, or the ology of themes. Themology. And here the themology is oceans and rivers and meeting in the middle. Now, he actually posted this in the comment section of the last butterfly video, but he had to email it so he could deliver the picture of what he saw. And I'll put that up for you. But I went back and looked at the posting he left, and here Sara Starchild also mentioned, hey, I saw two rivers as well. I mean, I wish you guys could have told me this a lot earlier, but I know it would have confused things and would have really jammed things up if I was looking for two rivers as to what really happened, and that was to find that first one river and try to figure out what that was. But just as a confirmation, yesterday I was looking at a specific constellation that is just a little bit further down the timeline, and one of its major components as far as its, do I call it theology or its story that it upholds, well, it has to do with oceans, and I'll get to that later. But here I'm working on the same thing, and these guys are dropping this on me the next day. And the themology of that next constellation I was looking at had a lot to do with oceans. And Eridanus, even though it's called the river, some cultures saw it more as an ocean, or at least a river running out of the ocean coming from Aquarius. So we got more and more themes, themology, converging. And before I go any farther or get deeper into this themology, I want to take a quick look back at what happened on December 7th, because those things that people were seeing as far as 182, that criminal conspiracy, well, I think it happened right in front of our face, hidden in plain sight. Yet not hidden in plain sight, because we need to expect that these things are going to happen when these elites and world powers are trying to take over humanity. Well, we had two major elections that pretty much locked things, I think, into a legal bind where God said, okay, you made your choice, you authorized that choice, now here comes my choice. So a gentleman named Adam White, I'm guessing he's one of the Team Jesus players, I hope he is, decided to type in 182. You remember that number that Sara Starchild saw in her dream? 182 had to do with those pine cones and those arrows. And he goes, I typed in 182 and the election results from the Indian election, and he said 5 numbers that equal 182 came up. And so I went and I Googled it, and this is what I found. And just look under the arch. You got 182/182. And I think that had to do with the percentage or something, some kind of number crunching that showed the landslide victory that the incumbent won as far as the leader of the country. I think they call them prime ministers over there. And that 182 number had to do with criminal conspiracy. And we know how voting goes in some of those eastern countries. They're almost as bad as what we just experienced these last couple of years here in the United States. Oh yeah, we just had the results of the Georgia Senate race conclude right around 10 to 11 p.m. on the 6th of December making that the 7th of December in Jerusalem. Even still, I think they had to wait till the next day, the 7th of December, to certify it. And we all kind of know, or at least suspect, how honest and transparent the elections have gone in Georgia. And the results of this Senate race pretty much leaves the socialistic bent political party, I'll leave unnamed, that has authorized what appears to be a slow, now it's a rapid destruction in the United States, including the border, abortion, the defunding of police, the undermining of our culture. I mean, the list goes on. And I think what God did was he allowed this to come to a head where they certified the elections, and now God is going to certify his decision. But humanity first had to make the decision and make it official, and they did with the certification of these elections. I just noticed through all my years of studying the Word that this is how God rolls. He gives us free will, you make a decision, you make it binding, and then he steps in. That can be a blessing if you're following his statutes and judgments and instructions, and it could get ugly if it's not. Just read Deuteronomy 28. So definitely there was a 182 criminal conspiracy that unfolded and that was authorized and certified across the world, as it were, on the 182, 2 pine cones and 5 arrows dream that we talked about. And that just all lined up with that conjunction of the full moon with Mars on December 7th. The countdown has begun. I wonder if there's another 3-2-1 involved there. But what I'm suggesting is that these numbers and these dreams and that date was prophetic. It just didn't fulfill itself the way we had hoped that something would happen, a big kickoff or whatever, but it could be pointing to that. And oh yeah, I went and I applied the Fibonacci curve to that particular date, and you will be surprised what I found. Seriously, because it went right through that second river, or at least the star that represents that second river, as well as a couple other points of contact, which in my estimation is divine confirmation that this is what it was talking about. And it's just a day or two away, and then so that's probably our next stepping stone. So let me run you through this real quick as to how I came up with this second river. And not the ocean I'm talking about with that constellation I earlier mentioned. No, I'm looking for a second river. And so what I did is I typed into Google river constellation. And I know that Eridanus would come up, and it did. But something weird happened, and that was a town in Des Moines, Iowa, actually built a kind of a themology park, themology, of a river constellation. And right next to it was the Raccoon River. And I'm going, well, if God's leading me from point A to point B to point C to point D, there's something probably here. And I'm not standing on it too solid, but this is how things work. And stranger things have happened, and let's just run with it and see what happens. So the next step was to type in Raccoon Constellation for the Raccoon River, because I'm looking for a river. And guess what? One came up. I found a raccoon constellation. You're looking at it. And it happens to be the main star in that little dog that Olive Branch saw in her dream. And I'm guessing sometime between that moon with the man smiling face and the third moon that had the owl in it. And this phrase that is becoming more and more popular, just kind of blurted out of my mouth, you can't make this stuff up. So now I have a serious point of contact that I can apply the Fibonacci curve to. Remember that fingerprint of God? God's pointing to something? Well, he's pointing to this, it looks like. I hope I can have a few more points of contact. Well, let's keep moving forward and see what happens. And that constellation, which is also known as the Raccoon Constellation, is Canis Minor. The star in question is, I think it's pronounced Procyon. I'll throw that up there so you can stumble over it worse than I did. That's Canis Minor. There's also a Canis Major. Those are the two dogs for Orion, his two hunting dogs. And like I said, Olive Branch, in her dream, saw this cowering little mutt, this little dog, and she actually picked the thing up because she thought it was going to get hurt when that rat was beating up the 3 mice that was on its back. Well, there's a reason these dreamers are seeing these animals, because they are part of the Mazzaroth that God is bringing forth in its season, which is right now. It's the season for that stuff to be brought forth. And they're seeing what I call these players, these characters, these animals, these are the players in the procession of the moon along the timeline of Stellarium. These people don't know what these animals are or why they're there, but they're there. And they've been there all along in Stellarium, and now God is bringing it to our attention because it's telling the story of what's going to happen between now and the next stepping stone. And hopefully we will come to that last stepping stone, and wait till you see what we have. The last video, we had one river. Well, there was two, but God didn't tell us that. And that's just the way he's doing things. Like I said, if there's anybody more upset than anybody else about this, it's me, because I have to make another video. And it never fails. Every time I put one of these things out, the next 2 days I'm a punching bag. The spiritual warfare increases exponentially. I'm not a happy camper. I'm not having fun doing this stuff. But this is the Lord's gift to you, and I'm happy to present it to you. So now we have a second river. That river is the Raccoon constellation because it matched with the Raccoon River of the Raccoon constellation that really doesn't exist. I mean, I found it in Des Moines, Iowa. But look how things are lining up. And let me line it up for you even more. I put the eye of that Fibonacci curve right over the full moon conjunction with Mars on the 7th of December. So it did its curly thing, came up and down, goes right through Gemini, right through the two main stars, Castor and Pollux. And I think Gemini has a double application. I think it has to do with something that Sara Starchild saw in one of her dreams of two stars colliding and exploding. Well, that's Betelgeuse, as far as I know, because Betelgeuse used to be a binary system, two stars. And the bigger star, Betelgeuse, sucked in the smaller star, and it spun up its rotation 150 times faster. I think that may have something to do with it being so unstable. And we've also been talking about this could be the two companions that she saw, and other people have talked about the two companions of Jesus that show up in the last day. And who is that? The olive branches. You remember the last video? Two chairs, Christ on our right. We have a chair with an olive branch, I'm guessing it's an olive branch, on the left. The two witnesses are the two olive branches or olive trees, and they're companions. Well, Gemini, you have two companions. And I've got that Fibonacci golden curve swooping down, going right through both of them, coming down and going through that star in Canis Minor, the Raccoon star or the Raccoon River. Canis Minor being the Raccoon constellation. But it doesn't end there. Keep following it down. Look what it zips through. It goes right through Sirius. And I think this goes back to James' picture that he drew. And the Lord said to him, like, this is the last time. Seriously. Seriously. He used the word seriously, which sounds pretty close to Sirius. And Sirius is the morning star in all the pagan cultures that hold that up as the bright morning star. And it's talked about in the Old Testament. Now, the Old Testament doesn't call it the bright morning star. It just calls it the son of the star or the son of the morning or something to that effect. But the pagans took it and amplified it and anointed it as the bright morning star. And if God's going to get his Mazareth back and all his constellations back and his moon and his sun back, typifying Christ, bringing it into that themology, well, he's going to claim all these things. It's coming back. He's restoring that just as he's restoring his calendar, his appointed times, his covenant dates, his convocations. He's taken it all back. And now we have the star Sirius, the bright morning star, connecting with the Fibonacci curve, because God's pointing at it, the Fibonacci fingerprint of God, the finger of God, he's pointing at it. Sirius is lined up with Betelgeuse. And if Betelgeuse pops, it will then become the bright morning star. I say that because Jesus prophesied that there's going to be this brilliant flash in the heavens, and that will be the sign of his return. And Sara Starchild saw two red stars collide and explode. Betelgeuse is a red giant. I'm assuming the other one was when it existed. It got sucked into Betelgeuse, according to the scientific community. And, well, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, it's all speculation. But like I said, you just can't make this stuff up. Apply it to the law of coincidence. So I have the Fibonacci countdown curve with the eye of that curve on a full moon conjoining with the god of war, swooping up, coming down through the Gemini twins, through the Raccoon constellation, Canis Minor, exactly through its major star, and down to a very Sirius star, which is called Sirius. And just a little trivia, if you look at the icon for the multimedia platform called Sirius, you'll see a dog and its eye is a star. Sirius is called the dog star. So don't you think a dog with an eye of a star is a dog star that they called Sirius? Yeah, these platforms, they're titling their company and their business after Babylon. Just a little trivia. Go ahead and Google it. You'll see. Google Sirius. I'm not sure if they're still using that icon, but it's a dog with its eye being a star. Dog star. Dog star is Sirius. Sirius is dog star. Seriously. Seriously it is. There's a joke in there someplace. So now we have two rivers, both confirmed with the Fibonacci golden fingerprint, finger of God. And I thought, what happens if we kind of pull that stellarium screenshot back a little bit and see how it aligns with Polaris, the throne of God? Well, you're looking at it, and you're looking at it on the 9th, because I've got it going from Polaris straight down. Yeah, we got another red sword here. Straight down, going through a nearly full moon on the 9th of December. It goes right through Sirius. Seriously. Another joke in there someplace. Right down to Argo. Oh, that's just ship we're going to be taking off on. And then it keeps going down, and it goes through the Magellanic Galaxy Cloud. Remember that one? And cool enough, if you keep going straight down, it's going to go through that sextant where we have the Southern Star, or what most people consider to be the Southern Star, which is also a Fibonacci figure. All going through that river that we just found by means of that Raccoon constellation, Canis Minor. So we have two rivers, and above the two rivers, just like you see in the drawing that Will provided us, you see the ocean. The ocean, in my estimation, would be greatly represented by the celestial equator or the celestial ecliptic, and that coming from Aquarius. But there's also ocean themology coming from that other constellation I mentioned earlier that's farther down, barely farther down the timeline, and that's the constellation Cancer. And my curiosity had the best of me, because I'm going, what does that have to do with anything as far as typology? Is it trying to say that Jesus is crabby? I don't think so. There's something there. So I looked up the themology of the constellation Cancer, and it is ruled by the moon goddess Artemis. And it has to do with ocean. And right on its left elbow, if you can call that an elbow, there's this interesting cluster of stars called the Golden Eye Cluster. No, not another eye of God. Yeah, Golden Eye Cluster. And what is the Fibonacci sequence curve called? It's called the Golden Ratio. Yep, here it comes. You can't make this stuff up. So both on the 7th of December and the 9th of December, we've got access to Polaris on the ship Argo. And this is where Will came in and said, I think this is us meeting in the middle, right where these two rivers are joining in the ocean. Now, just as a little bit more possible confirmation, I took that same straight line red sword and I started it at Polaris and I dropped it down to where the moon would be on 12/12. Any of you been getting that number? I have been for over a year and a half. 12/12. Multiple applications. Remember that? Multiple applications? Because I think it talks about 12/2, Exodus 12/2, the true Rosh Hashanah of God, and the only Rosh Hashanah of God. The other number is 919, and you see how I dialed that in to this picture. Look at the time. 12th month, 9th day, 19th hour, 919. That's another number I've received for just as long as 12/12. And on December 9th, on the 19th hour, you see where the moon is. That's where I decided to place the moon to see how things were lined up. They're lining up like, how incredible is that? Seriously. Yeah, I'm going to wear that joke out until there's nothing left of it. Seriously. So on this rendering, I went from Polaris down through where the moon would be on December 12th, around the 12th hour, 12/12/12. It cuts through the moon, goes down through Argo, and then it goes right through the G299 nebula that God gave us as a screenshot here a few weeks back. He's connecting all the players. He's using this themology. He's using the players, the numbers correct. And guess where it goes to? Take a look on the right side of that picture. It goes through the moon and through the golden eye cluster. Are you ready? You can't make this stuff up. So thanks, Will. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you, Adam White. Thank you, guys. The bill is in the mail. Look how much work you caused me. Seriously. And the next and final question in this video is, so what does that all mean? I don't know. That's not my job description. That's why you have a Lord and Savior who is drawing you to his heart, that's drawing you into the Spirit, that's drawing you into a deeper communication and a deeper relationship where you have to rely on him to bring you those answers. And this goes to another recent Sara Starchild dream that she had concerning Solomon and his bow. And I kind of figured out what he was trying to say. There are two ways that these arrows, we're talking arrows again. Weren't we talking arrows through the last couple videos? Arrows, it's pointing at things, it's defining things. How do we find out what these arrows are? By two means. Well, actually five, but she only remembered two, the first one and the last one, in that dream. The first one, that arrow came at the speed of light. That's illumination. Remember the verse that talks about Satan disguises himself as an angel of light? Well, that's not what it's referring to. It's not light like you flip a light switch or you're looking into the headlights of your car. It's talking about illumination. He brings illumination. False illumination, but it's described and metaphored as light. That's what he was successful with in deceiving Eve. Hey, Eve, I'm going to give you all this illumination, all this wonderful knowledge, all this secret squirrel stuff. God's not going to give it to you. Hath God said? Nah. Take a bite of this fruit, and you will know good from evil, and you will know all this secret squirrel stuff. And won't you be the head lady on the block once you know all this stuff? And he's been doing that illumination trick on all mankind ever since. And sad to say, his worst victims call themselves Christian leaders. So what's number 5? Or what's 2 through 5? Well, 5, I'm thinking, and she says that comes slower. Well, that's when you go in and you grind it out. You go look into Strong's Concordance to reveal a number. You go into the Bible. Remember all the grinding we did with the numbers 911, 1111, 711, 717, and here are the two I just mentioned, 919 and 1212. I got a few others. I have to think of Shelley at Servant Warriors. Her whole ministry is based on that. And I fought that stuff tooth and nail when the Lord started giving me that, because I'm going, well, this is Christian numerology. And what he came back at me with is, it is if you're chasing after that stuff. Oh, I'm going to go out and see how many numbers I can get off of license plates today. It's quite the different thing when it finds you. And that's the difference also for those who are running after signs and wonders. Paul said, the signs and wonders will follow you. They will come in behind you. You're not to go seek them out. In fact, one of Jesus' most profound and prolific rebuke is those who seek after signs and wonders. Go look it up. Some very harsh words there. What did he say? An evil and an adulterous generation? He wasn't just talking to the Pharisees and Sadducees. He was talking to anybody who would read that verse when it was put in the Bible. So it was mostly meant for us. And we got people running after signs and wonders. Don't do that. Get into the relationship with the Lord, and at some point in time, those signs and wonders will follow you. You don't have to find them, because if you're making stuff up, it's all make-believe. And that's the thing that destroys the prophetic movement faster than anything, because people get into make-believe, and they hype themselves up, and they exalt themselves, and guess who's there with the speed of light illumination? Well, that would be that basilisk, that serpent, that used that trick on Eve. And we are God's Eve right now. Eve is the church. We are Eve. And that basilisk, that serpent, is working overtime. And that's another reason we need safety in numbers and Team Jesus working together to keep each other in check and to bring information where we can sit down and Berean brainstorm it together and see if we can come up with something where we're applying that fifth arrow of Solomon, where we're grinding things out and coming up with answers. You're looking at some applications. I am not going to tell you what I think it means, because so far I've been pretty much wrong every time, and I had to resort to, well, it's not going to be some great prophetic event happening, it's a stepping stone. Even though the 182 on December 7th, yeah, that kind of lines up with a criminal conspiracy with how the elections came out, which pretty much doomed another 1 million babies to abortion this next year, because you know the political system is not going to give that up. And neither are many people in this country. That's Moloch worship. And the only God that God named by name in the Torah was Moloch. And he said, if you don't destroy those people who come into the camp who practice Moloch worship, well, I will destroy them, and then I will come and I will destroy you. Go look it up. Moloch worship back in the day, back in Moses' day, was the birth control industry of that day. And Solomon, here I mentioned Solomon earlier, one of his big no-nos is he burned incense to the god of his foreign wives, which was Moloch. So I really think that December 7th was prophetically fulfilled, just not to our satisfaction, because we're looking for the big ticket item, which is rapture or tribulation starting or something end-time events. We just don't recognize what we're looking at. And that December 7th certainly produced another starting point for the Fibonacci countdown curve. I mean, look what it produced. So you do the math. And as I always suggest, take the information, tear it apart, deconstruct it, put it back together, kick the tires, drive it around the block. Ultimately, this is between you and the Lord. And I always end with, if you don't have that deep relationship with Christ, with the Lord, with our bridegroom, then all this information is useless to begin with. We definitely have some interesting themes, some themology going on here, more serious than previous, but I can dial in themology for the next 2 weeks until the end of this year. I'm still thinking and I'm still hoping that what's going to happen will be in the year 2022 for the many reasons that I've stated in previous butterfly videos. So we will see what we will see, and if we don't see all that much, there's always another stepping stone. Maranatha.